6, 5, 4.
It was scheduled, delayed, then rescheduled numerous times, but finally, for the first time in their history, private company SpaceX launched a Falcon 9 rocket with their Dragon capsule on board. The rocket took off early this morning, and it's on its way to rendezvous with the International Space Station. If this flight is a success, commercial spacecraft could be ferrying astronauts and other paying customers to space within 5 years. Joining us now to shed some light on this is Dave Brody, a science and technology writer from space.com. Thanks for talking to us, Dave.
Hey, my pleasure, Dan.
So why is this a big deal?
Well, it is, as you mentioned, the launch of a commercial space rocket. Now, one rocket looks pretty much like another, right? But it's who's flying the rocket that's really critical here. These folks, SpaceX, company out of Hawthorne, California, founded by Elon Musk. You may know him as the PayPal founder or co-founder. He also runs Tesla Motors. Well, this is a pet project of his. He really wants to see you and I, normal people, have the option to get off the surface of the planet Earth, or at least to take advantage of all that space has to offer. And until this launch, until this opening of a new chapter, it's always been done by governments. Now we see that there may be another way.
Okay, so, all right, so the significance of this in terms of what it opens up for the future is one thing, but let's talk about this particular trip first. I mean, what are they going to the International Space Station to do?
Essentially, they're going to prove that they can. They're going to bring their Dragon capsule up very close to the space station, and if NASA is completely happy with the private Dragon capsule, NASA astronaut Don Pettit will reach out with the Canada arm, grapple the Dragon capsule, and berth it on board the space station and begin to transfer some cargo. So what this means is that now, if it's successful, a private company can ferry cargo up to the station, and very importantly, it can also bring it back down. There is currently no vehicle that can bring cargo only down off the space station. The Soyuz capsule, which flies astronauts, cosmonauts, maybe someday Chinese dikonauts, is for people and a very limited amount of cargo. But other than throwing out the trash, you want to bring back the results of experiments. You want to bring back new industrial processes, products, and that sort of thing. Dragon makes this possible for the very first time.
Okay, now what about ferrying people like you and me or people watching Daily Planet? I mean, how realistic is it that, tourists are going to get to go up there?
Well, tourists are going now, but the tourists have an awful lot of dollars to spend on it. You know, you have to spend about, at this point, the going rate is $30 million or so for a week to 10 days aboard the space station. I can't afford to do that. Maybe you can, Dan, on your rich salary. No. So here's the deal with SpaceX. By showing that this commercial cargo can be done, the same capsule, the Dragon capsule, is designed to be operated to carry at least 7 people into orbit. And the best news is that SpaceX has competitors for this commercial crew capability. So now you've got the engine of free enterprise, companies actually trying to outbid each other, and that tends to bring the price down as long as you don't artificially support it. So in a deregulated commercial spaceflight environment, it very quickly, we think, becomes cheap enough for you and I to go. Maybe not for a stay, but at least for a quick trip, maybe a visit to a high-flying honeymoon hotel, if you're into that sort of thing, Dan.
That's so unbelievably cool. Now, for a private company to do this kind of thing, what are the real challenges? I mean, it's rocket science, so it must be difficult, but what are the hardest parts for this private company?
Well, the hardest part was that they needed to get a kickstart from NASA, and thank goodness we here south of the border have been smart enough to adjust the way NASA did business so that it wasn't constantly doing business on a cost-plus basis with large, essentially military, industrial, complex aerospace contractors, but is now doing fixed-price contracts, and they were able to let 1 to 2 companies, SpaceX is one, Orbital Science is the other, so that for a fixed fee, they said, we need 12 cargo flights to the space station. If you can get us there, we will give you the money. And they don't get paid unless they successfully deliver. That's a whole new way of doing business. We've never done it that way before.
And so this may lead to, tourists going up to space on a cheaper ticket than what they cost now. But do you think, I mean, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, but what about like living in space, or people just, getting a place on the space station, or just spending as much time as they want up there? Is that in the cards, or is that just way too far off?
Oh, I sure think so, Dan. This rocket, this SpaceX launch this morning has blown the doors off the possibility of lowering the cost to low Earth orbit. Once you do that, you are, as someone famously said, halfway to anywhere in the universe. Because the cost of bringing something up from the ground to low Earth orbit is very expensive, but it turns out there are resources in space, notably water, that can be used to really open up the near Earth space environment and then go on to explore the solar system beyond for the sake of science, for the sake of biomedicine, for the sake of manufacturing, and for the sake of people actually living there enjoying the view. I'd consider retiring to orbit in my old age when gravity has had its effect on my body. Wouldn't you, Dan?
Be easier than losing all the weight I'd put on, I guess. But thank you so much for putting this all in perspective. You take care, Dave.
Take care, Dan. See you in space.
See you there.